Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Reaction Time, where we react in time.
In good
Uh,
time.
I'm David. That's Steven. That's Eric. We're here once again to talk about some random stuff because it's the League of Legends off season. We've talked about a lot of stuff already. So we might go to some different places and do some reminiscing of bygones and years gone to the wayside this episode. But we are going to talk a little bit about some of the current news that's going on. I'm gonna jump a little. I'm gonna spook you guys. We didn't do any real planning of the order of this, so they don't know what I'm gonna talk about. So, first reaction: Damwon locks their roster in for the year. Their top laner is not the triumphant return of Nuguri, but is in fact Birdall, most recently of Gen G, a former T1 trainee, along with Canyon, Showmaker, and then the former Nongshin bot lane of Doktum and Kellen. Eric, what are your thoughts about this roster going into the LCK next year?
Um, so so Birdall's a bit green, and from my memory was like basically an Aurelio one trick. And now, like to be fair, if there's a team where it's okay to have a narrow champion pool, it's probably on Damwon. And then you hope that the OP stuff gets banned away from this roster. Um, the bot lane from Nongshim, that's Red Force, right? I'm not.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, is another big pickup. That roster completely falling apart is like really fascinating. I think it's just Peanut who was
Yeah,
re-signed.
in case you don't know and didn't follow this, that roster should have been at Worlds instead of Hanwha Life in every reasonable world. They finished top 3 or top 4 in the LCK in the summer split. Were by far the form team going into that matchup, and Hanwha Life showed up like they had not done all year. Hanwha Life, again, finished 8th in the LCK in summer split. They were not supposed to make Worlds. That was supposed to be Nongshin's spot. So it's a little bit of a tragedy that we never got to see them progress any farther before they got completely devoured.
But so taking a cohesive bot lane makes a lot of sense for this team. And then I'm sure that, as usual, uh, Damwon is building rosters based off of how well people play together on the map, more so than individual skill ceilings. And when you have the like two of the best players in the world already on this roster, like that's a great starting point.
Steven, got anything for me?
Um, I'm kind of surprised that someone's changing too much up, but I think they had to make some moves as far as not being a two-time world champion. So, uh, investing in some greener talent and then just having a very cohesive team seems to be the better option as far as long-term success.
Well,
So,
in a related note, you have to wonder a little bit about their budget, right? Because they retained Canyon and Showmaker through free agency. However, I assume there was a significant financial outlay to retain Canyon and Showmaker.
yes.
So you wonder if they just didn't have the contract money to get a bigger name top laner than Birdall.
And this was the end of the first season after LCK
Franchising. Yep.
franchising,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
And so that's another big thing to keep in mind is that orgs this year will have a very different stance in how they approach off season in LCK, and then how they like retain talent will be different than it has in like the LCK era of Korean League of Legends. So like be on the lookout for like when they develop in house versus trade or have player changes, because they're less likely to have like long standing good for LCK rosters than they were in the past.
And it does, like, from the moves that have happened, it appears to be the case of the teams with the biggest budgets doing the best at retaining their best players. We see Gen G come out of the offseason probably looking the best with a lot of really big named moves. We see T1 retain Faker with rumors of TSM having a $40 million offer on the table to try and get him. 40
Supposedly.
million American dollar dues.
I mean,
Um,
A lot.
is that even enough to go to the supposed
and like from what I don't know if there's anything public about his T1 contract, but I know there was some rumors out there when he resigned that it was a lot of money for the LCK for him to stay in it. And then you have Afrika successfully retaining Keen and trying to build around him, and that's an org that's got some money to play with as well. So like there are reasons that it's starting to look like the LCK teams are starting to try to play ball a little more on the financial level of the LPL teams that have been stealing their players. The other LCK tidbit I wanted to mention is what I think is really cool. I believe this is the first time there's been a Japanese import to the LCK, with Arya joining KT from Detonation Focus Me. Unless Arya is Korean and was Korean this whole time.
So I'm pretty sure Arya was one of the Korean imports to.
Which is a bummer, because
Yeah.
I was hoping for more spice.
Yeah, it's not quite that spicy. Arya and who was the other? Was it? It was Gang. Yeah, Arya
Yeah.
and Gang and Steel on Detonation Focus Me were all Korean, and so Evie and Yutapon were the two Japanese players on that roster. Um, I think it was. I don't remember if it was Gang or Steel. One of them got residency status in Japan, and so they were able to go to 3 Korean players on the roster. And Arya was like the player who really pushed them over the edge on like what they're able to bring to the table in recent years. So it's really cool that he had success in the LJL and is now going back, because he never was on a he was never on an LCK roster. Like he's been LJL for a long time now. So this is a really cool move, and it shows that scene as like talent development can still kick in.
Well,
But
and what's interesting
yeah,
about this whole KT roster, because we have the whole thing, is you have two of their primary members as returning, coming from the LJL and coming back from the LPL, because they also signed Aiming on his return to the LCK from the LPL. The whole KT roster is Rascal, Cuz, Arya, Aiming, and Life. And like that's a lot of players that have played at Worlds recently.
Performing talent, like currently performing up to par. So
Like I think
the
Aiming has progressed the least far internationally of all the members on their roster, and he is not bad.
yeah, Amin was like the star carry of that Billy BLG roster,
Yep.
which was supposed to be a super team, but completely fell apart. And it ended up being like they had to completely play around aiming to win games. And he's not as good as Viper, is I guess is like BLG ended up kind of being like EDG light inside of the LPL.
We're going to talk about LPL rumors sometime in December once stuff actually starts coming in. The rumor is that they're going to go even deeper on bot lane hard carrying by the name of Uzi. Um, So that and there's also rumors that org is having significant financial problems and therefore haven't been able to actually sign any of the like super duper Hall star players that they've been rumored to sign, and that their investors are pulling out. Like that,
yikes.
there's some shit going on with BLG this offseason that we don't know enough about in the West.
There are reasons why LPL is always the last region to have like announcements of like finalized rosters, and this is one of those reasons.
Yes. Um, so those are a couple little LCK tidbits that got finalized today that I think are both very interesting. KT having a real actual team, I think, is going to be good for the league. That's a team. It's an organization like the Legacy NA orgs that it is probably good for them to have a decent team in the league.
If only
And
they
they
fix
have
their
not been
logo.
they have not been for a minute. Yeah, exactly. And they need to go back to the old logo.
I'll take that.
So now speaking of more Korean news, we're going to talk about Cloud9's new head coach, LS, confirmed. Are you ready to go to church, boys?
Blessed. Blessed be my Leandries.
Is it gonna work or not?
Well, what I appreciate about this move is with them also signing Berserker, or rumored to have Berserker and like a pretty Korean heavy team, as well as Fudge, who's a big LS stan. Like, um, there will be no excuses in this roster. Like one of the places where signing like either remote or like these distanced analyst coaches has fallen apart with either Monty or LS in the past is that the culture of these, North American players hasn't jived with their leadership styles. My favorite story from the CLG days with Monty being remote is like they boot camped in Korea before going into playoffs, and then like they practice like a specific game plan. They go to NA. Monty's still in Korea. They watch Prey and the Tigers like play Juggermaw in 3 games. They've never played Juggermaw before. They go into a best of tournament in NA playoffs and try and play Juggermaw, and they just like absolutely get destroyed 3 games in a row. And it's like that's a sign that this isn't working, right? When it's you practice one thing, but then like your coach isn't there, and then you just decide to do something new on stage. Um, um, in person, even better. So like,
I
um,
figured
so
I would
like,
give you the link. I had not seen it for sure yet,
so
but
like,
there it is for sure.
so like him being in person, and then him having a roster of players who are more likely to be in line with his strategy means that there are effectively no excuses. Where if this team has strategic flaws or has like uh, gameplay issues, like this will be mainly on LS, and so you'll see that pretty clearly. Like the only thing you blame the players on is if they get just like outskilled in game repeatedly. But even then, like it's pretty clear from the signings that LS was their foreign scouting for this team, especially with them dumping Rain over. So this either like works and then more teams will follow the LS school of thought uh, to faulty results, or we'll see, what happens. My expectation is that the first split is not going to look great, so we'll see how things play out. But it'll be interesting.
So that's my curious question because this looks like an investment move. Like, is this like a long term like we're gonna funnel Korean young talent through NA to sell them off after we continually win like splits? Like that's my confusion because like with Liquid, I see like instant impact of these investments. Like this is a super team and they're going to win. And we're paying them to win. If they don't win, we change it up again. With this, if they don't do really well, or like, this is where maybe my ignorance shows or my confusion, but I just don't see like this doesn't look like a win quick scheme, and it doesn't necessarily look like a long term investment plan. But I'm just kind of confused by it, honestly.
Well, I definitely think it is an investment. The question is it an investment towards Worlds this year? Is it an investment towards they're going to place top 3 NA because they're Cloud9, and then like you said, like sell off these players then to other NA orgs? I don't believe, because they haven't announced some of them yet, I don't believe we know what some of these player contracts look like from a duration perspective. It could be Jack recognizing that the lower tier terms are done with high buyout contracts, and so now he's changed his market strategy to like avoid that like money market because he made bank off of FlyQuest last year. And so it's like,
Yes.
so like, is he changing this up now to instead like be a funnel for these other players who also could then, after a good stint on C9, go back to LCK? Because that's another thing with taking the players from like the developmental teams on SKT or other teams there is if they play a split in NA and look good, then they can go back to LCK on a premier team, and then C9 can pick up another rising star from over there if they have good scouting, which they seem like the only team to have really good scouting for that scene. So then, like, if you do that, like, because like the end goal that a lot of these that I believe Jack in like a positive light
Yeah.
is going for is how do we continually inflate the scrim and solo queue experience in NA. That's been the big theme from the Players Association and from the orgs this offseason is like we want to increase the value of gameplay for pros in North America by having our separate pro server in LA and by bringing in these players who want to play on it. So like the end game is like if they can even set up a funnel of bringing over fresh talent to play on that server, like that would be very good for like their results as well as for like, you know, increasing international odds is the intent. We'll see if it plays out that way, but like that seems like one of the strategies that they're going for.
Well, and then you can also argue that they're trying to integrate their native talent with what they're doing. Like you look at the doubling up of Isles and Winsome at support. I'm interested to see how that dynamic plays out. Same for I think King and Berserker. There's a possibility that they'll both be available for the top team, and then like we mentioned, Fudge in amongst all of this. I don't imagine for a second he's not still going to be working on some top lane gameplay. And boy, Summit is going to be a good role model for that. If he wants to pick up some tips and tricks, because I have a feeling he's not going to be in the mid lane for his whole career. I could be wrong, but um, it is two pronged talent development in terms of you have this Korean pipeline, but you also have like C9 has long had some of the best theoretical scouting in NA and in Oceania with all the players they've managed to bring over and develop. So let's see if their Korean side works.
My biggest concern with this strategy, and you mentioned like the dual setup, it's like one of the big praises they've always gotten from players is that they have been highly collaborative academy to LCS for like lane matchup training as well as actual scrim experience. Um, so with this new change, like that they do keep that up is important, but they also like lost West Rice in this offseason, who has been their academy coach for years now, and like has been the academy coach through like 3 or 4 of these iterations of them promoting players from their academy roster into dominating LCS. So like who's taking over that role and like is it just LS or is there someone else in that role? Like I think Max Waldo is like the other like LS affiliated individual who's on C9 who like but I don't know what role he would play in the development aspect of this. But it's like that's my other question is like you've thrown away all of your existing infrastructure that we're aware of.
That was
And
working, more
that
or
was
less.
working. So like now it's like you're anticipating that that your culture, that your leadership is good enough that like your positive aspects will remain even with the personnel shakeup. And so like because like if this experiment doesn't go great, or even if it's more of a perks-ish scenario where you have LS for a year and then LS is done, like where do you end after this? Because unlike perks, where like perks leaving after a year, you can recover, right? You just need a new mid laner. You might be in the financial hole, but like you're not like in the worst position as far as your composition and your resources. Whereas with this, it's like if like LS leaves after a year, what do you have left? And I don't know how they could rebuild from that. So that's like the scary stuff with this.
Yeah, that's more or less in a nutshell what I was concerned about. It's like you do all this infrastructure rebuilding, and it seems really radical. Um, where with everybody like swapping everything up every year, like that doesn't make sense. So that's where a lot of my concern comes in. Is like you don't just bring over all these people and then just try it for like a split and a half or something.
The other point that I want to make about this move is to not just view this from C9's perspective. LS moving out of Korea is a really big deal. He's been embedded there for almost a decade now, I think. Like, and it I think has been working towards citizenship and has been doing all this stuff as a permanent resident there, speaks a decent chunk of the language. I He is wagering a lot by moving back to North America that this is going to work.
Yeah.
Because
It had to be a
he has
huge
talked
check.
about how Korea is his home. So he's putting a lot on the line here by agreeing to do this. And I'm very impressed that he's agreeing to it because it's he's putting a little bit of his legacy out here. So it's a lot of the commentary is going to be C9 games are going to be the most talked about of the whole split because there's going to be a lot of interest one way or the other, and it's going to be what it is. I can't lie, I'm as interested as anybody to see if it works or not and how it's going to go. Jokes about Renekton pickers here. The other coaching roster update, I saw 100 Thieves announced theirs. It was Mithy coming over from C9 along with Freeze and Reapered as the complete coaching staff. I know Reapered was there for at least a chunk of last year as well. So that's a pretty solid coaching staff. Mithy seems like a good addition to that and has gotten good experience. Eric, any particular thoughts on that coaching staff?
So from what we've heard from Freeze in the past in interviews, like this will be the first actual off season and prep going into a season that Reaper will have with the team. So expect 100 Thieves to look absolutely bonkers in the lock-in tournament.
There you go. All right. That's all the hot news of the day that I can think of. Other than as I scroll my Twitter timeline briefly here, seeing that Sneaky has a new cosplay stream coming up soon, and he's partnering with an actual popular cosmetics line for it. So that's
Oh, interesting.
going deep. I respect it.
That's following a career change that I
I
never
Nothing
anticipated.
but respect for what he has done. Nothing but respect. So we're gonna bring in a question prompt that I think friend of the show Doug, who was with us last week for our arcane discussion, has brought up on occasion. I feel like I've shot the shit about this with you guys at least once before, but it's a good one to bring back. So the prompt is: how would professional League of Legends be different if bans were series long? So this assumes, kind of by nature, that there is a series here, which obviously we don't do that here in North America, but in regions where there is a best of three, bans taking stuff out from game one and lasting all the way through game three is a significant change. So let's start there. Eric, would you even have a consideration about this taking effect in a best of one setting?
In a best of one setting, no. It assuming like LCS in its current format, where we have best of one in regular season and then best of three or best of five in playoffs. Like, I really am not fond of it, of like that much of a disparity in like the out of game like cognitive elements of what's going on. Like it so whenever you have like minimizing pools, like you need to think about like at how many games in a series do you think is optimal for this format, um so that you hit like the sweet spot at some point in a series. And like jumping from a one game series to a five with this big of a change would be like really painful. And it also means that if you're like a like talk about like the pain points that we already see with like low in standings or young teams making it into playoffs in NA for the first time, and then like, you know, shitting the bed in a best of five. All of a sudden now it's like they're not just learning how to play in a best of five for the first time. They're figuring out like, oh, I can't play Renekton for the second time what do I do? And
You're
like
pinch to pinch to
that
pinch.
seems like a really bad situation to put people into for the first time in playoffs.
So the question about best of one then that I would propose is if you were to try to implement this in the regular season in NA, what I would suggest as a tweak would be bans stick with a team through a weekend. Um, so if you ban 5 champions against C9 in their Friday game, those 5 champions are still banned for C9 in their Saturday game, and then whoever they get banned in their Sunday game, they lose 10 for their Sunday game, even though they would be playing different teams. That the bans stay with the team.
So, and I think we're going back to primarily having 2 game days a week
Yeah.
for this
So then,
season.
like, it wouldn't be a 3 game; it'd be a 2 game. So it wouldn't quite hit the same as a whole best of 3, but like, it's an idea to get it to hit in the regular season.
Um, my only complaint with that approach is that it creates a lot of room for abuse,
Mm-hmm.
like some Pete Rose style action up in here, where where teams could have some absolutely tragic pick bans to specifically like cause failure from the opponent going into the next day of the week. um I like maybe that's too negative of a take, and like instead it would be like it frees up teams to be much more ambitious with pick ban strategy day 1 or day 2. You know, we'd see some very different pick bans, like maybe they do ban 5 mid laners against Bjergsen, you know, and then game 2 that week Bjergsen's really sweating because, you know, he can't play Zillion or Syndra or Oriana
Galio.
or LeBlanc or Galio, and he's like, or Karma, or, you know,
Yeah,
and then
go
it's
full
like, how
10
many,
against someone.
you know,
Jeez.
so like maybe you would add that element from it too, but like having the controller of that shift from game to game is what I don't like, where, you know, the team who's imposing the bans in game 1 doesn't either benefit or suffer from that decision making going into the next day. Like somehow if it was like the champions team's ban carries over into the next game, or the next day, that to me would be, I'd prefer that, because the team remains in control of
So,
their
like, the
own
bans
investment.
given stick with the team instead of the bans taken.
Right. Yeah, because then they're still in control of their own investment. And so then if you know you're going into like the double bot lane carry week, you just ban the ADCs game 1 and like try and really position game 2, like your first 3 bans in a really good spot. That I like better, because it's like you are in full control of like what carries over, as opposed to, you know, you can get randomly trashed because like someone decides to stick it to you because of their because they have some money on a table somewhere.
However, in playoffs, a team could just stick it to one player and one role because it doesn't change.
Right.
So, just Steven, what are your thoughts on this whole rigmarole that we've gone over so far?
I would like to see a deeper push on character selection, because like let's hypothetically say it's a best of 5 series where those bans start carrying over. Like that's a lot of like targeted bans at that point, and you're really pushing down. Because what are we talking? Like let's say we get to game 5. How many total bans is that?
25?
Yeah. So that's more or less a fifth of the champions removed. Like that would be some wild game 5
Well,
action.
50, 50 total in that game, right? So like 50 total champions removed. So I do like we're not sure they'd all be targeted bans, right? Because what is most likely to happen in a best of 5, I'm spitballing here,
Mhm.
is after you've put Bjergsen in the dumpster by banning 5 mid laners in game 1. Game 2, TSM will have to have some non-Bjergsen centric strategy they play as a guess. Or in game 3, maybe because he has some niche pocket pick he pulls out, you know? that you weren't expecting, where all of a sudden they play like Juggernaut or something like that. So then at some point you have to start banning out strategies from this team, or like other things, because they'll try and do something to shake up the ban, or like negate your bans later on in that draft window. That being said, like, I do think that this, like, the series unique bans are actually better in a best of 3 than a best of 5, because like in like not necessarily even from just like how many like the not because I think the number 50 is too big with how many champions are in the game right now, but it's more of like one of the niche things that people talk about with League of Legends. And this is like from LS who's coming over, is like how many champions can a pro player lane with at the highest quality of the game? Like how many champions can you actually lane with at the highest quality? And and uh, a reasonable number in LCS right now is 3 to 5, and you can expect up to maybe 7. So like when you do think about that 50 champions removed things, like at some point you're going to degrade the quality of like the experience that you're watching, where one or both of the laners are not going to actually be playing highest level League of Legends. And it'll turn into more of a fiesta. And it's like if and
Well, we do
that's where
like
it gets kind of
Fiesta.
awkward. That's where it gets awkward, is like in a best of 5 you've hit a point where multiple players on both teams are probably going to be outside of their like expected high quality laning champion wheelhouse, where they actually know matchups and mechanics. And then like, is that a good watching experience
So
as a
real quick,
fan, is
point
the
of
question.
order. There are 157 champions currently in the game. So 50's only taken a third of them
Third.
out. It's not as much as you think it is anymore.
Yeah.
We are old.
Old.
Just to remind you, it's
Yeah.
not like there are 90 in the game anymore. There's 157.
But at a
So
minimum, does that
I honestly think you could do a best of 5, a full best of 5, and take them all out. If a role is focused out, as we've talked about, I do not think mid lane would be the problem. I think ADC would be the problem.
yeah, all
Because there are not even 25 ADCs, and we have seen interesting bot lanes happen. I am personally not opposed to bot lane players being forced to be more versatile. We've seen mage bot lanes happen. We've seen Ziggs as a meta AD carry kind of now on and off for about a whole year. We have the Legend of Hjarnan, and his Heimerdinger, which forces bans to this day, I believe. And like things like that, right? If you're playing a team with Hjarnan on it in this setting, you have to add the Heimerdinger to the list of things you're banning out for the series. Where other players, yeah, let's ban out the roster of ADCs and see what they know how to play other than that, and what kind of lane they can create down in bottom lane. Because the unexplored dynamics that an ADC less duo lane meta would create, I think would be very, very interesting, both for the players involved and for the champions that were used.
And I think that's what I think that is what we're digging at with this question, is like we just want to see more characters come into play and more like really unique strategies come into play. So I think anything that Riot can do to add to that potential is a better viewing experience, in my opinion. Because I think when we talk about like the history of League and when like there was a lot of hype about it and when we were most enjoying it, like when Darius and Mordekaiser were fresh into those like Juggernaut introduction, and we're like, whoa, like these characters are getting picked and they're in the game, like we go bonkers when we see something fresh and new and we don't see the normal going on. When Ashe gets played, like it's always a highlight champion. I don't know, Poppy coming out, like, when there was old Poppy and new Poppy coming out is always pretty refreshing. So I think at the end of the day, when we're talking about, like, play being degraded because of the amount of bans or anything like that, I don't know if we necessarily wanna see the top level play, mechanically. We wanna see fiestas and fun shit.
Yeah, and like the other kind of prevailing point is I think that there are at least 50 champions you could somewhat reasonably pick in top lane. I think that probably most of the same 50 champions you could probably pick in mid lane. I think there are, at this point, given the amount of support Riot has given to it, there are at least 50 champions you can play in the jungle without adjusting too much. You can play anything the fuck you want at support. Um, it's the duo lane carry role that I think would be the most affected by this. And I think you would see things like perks and caps moving from a mid lane role to a bot lane role, but not just for player need reasons, but because the much wider champion pool would allow them to be more successful in that kind of meta. Like a player like Jizuke, who's announced he's going to be teamless this year. One of Jizuke's favorite champions to play is Lucian, who is an ADC. A different one, but an ADC. If Jizuke could get to a competent level on ADCs, he'd be exactly the kind of player you would want in this bot lane carry role world, in my opinion.
And I think it exposes another thing that, like, ADC needs, or, like, the carry position. I really like the pushes that they are making and had made, I think, stronger in the past, was to allow other characters to be put into that position, but not necessarily function the same. I loved, ADC Mord. I love that era. I like when Sindri was down there. I like when we have, like, the Sonateric setup, like, exposing that number of AD carries is really good. I like Ziggs, I like Swain, I like those things down there, and the more we can shake up that pool and let niche or new things come in there, I'm cool with. Whatever it takes, man.
You can bring out Eric's trademark Blitzcrank Thresh duo lane with
Y
Thresh carry from solo queue.
of course.
So I am gonna stand kind of on the opposite side of both of you from this one,
Yeah.
because any format which makes it so that players like Uzi actively a detriment to your team because they have a very narrow play style where they're like invested in their gameplay and their mechanics to the detriment of being able to like function on something like a Syndra. Anything that would make it so that we couldn't get an Uzi in the game because he's too narrow. Like that to me is a complete tragedy. So like I do like mages bot lane or these other things, but if we're edging out players of this from the scene because like they only play like Vayne or like highly aggressive, skill intensive champions, and that's their niche, then like that's very problematic to me. Is like because in addition to seeing like depth of champions, I really like seeing players like go all out on their like one trick or on their like on their zone in their mode, and it's like that is one of the things you do lose in these series is is playing Uzi good in your team if he only can really play in one game in a best of, and like that would be a complete tragedy.
It already isn't really that good today in professional League of Legends with 5 bans, is my argument, Eric.
Well,
Uh,
and this opens up the opportunity to have deeper player rosters. Like, I love 7-man teams where you can shake things up in a best of series, and you put him in to draw bans, or you bring him back in after the bans are it's like, haha, this is still up. We're gonna get our homie in here, and he's gonna showcase on the 180 carry, true 80 carry that was left up in the comp. Like those kind of things.
I
Uh,
get that when you're talking about like medium tier players like having deep rosters or like specialists, but like when you're talking about like Faker getting subbed out for Easy Hoon BS because of some champion pool thing. Like I'm against that. And like the 5 champ ban thing with the only being the 3 in the first rotation hasn't caused like players like Uzi to completely lose their things. It does hurt the one tricks a bit, but like every season there have been 2 to 3 OP champions who teams have to ban, and like those are going to stick. And like so that's why I'm saying that like even if they did swap to this like series long ban meta, the OP3 are probably still going to go first rotation or like close to first rotation in the game 1. And so then it's really what happens in the second 2 bans from a team on game 1, as well as then like what shapes up in the first 3 in the first 6 bans in the second game that shape how that goes. Like, and I don't know. I hear what you're saying, where it's like it's already become a bit of a detriment, but Uzi still could have like destroyed some of these ADCs who are playing in the LPL this year. We saw Viper hard carry on several champions who like were fairly unique to him. Not too many people were going ham on Zaya at that point in time. It was like him and Rat were like the 2 people, and they were very different players. So like I mean, I get the idea for depth. I love the idea of like being able to develop players with these flexible skills. But on the flip side, like if somebody got pushed out of the scene who was very good because of that change, that would be the worst case scenario.
The greatest player of all time is noted for his ability to play anything and everything he's ever wanted to in the mid lane, is the only response I have.
Yeah. Faker.
Like, it
Faker
has
is
always
Faker.
been a high value trade. Shout out to Yi Mid in the LCK and winning on it
After AP was dead. You have to
after he
specify.
was
Yeah.
just disgusting.
It's like
I think he
because like
played
Scar was winning a lot of games before this on mid E.
man, what times to be alive. Um so then we talked about the unique champions. We talked about bans being permanent. I think the champion pool would become problematic if it's picked and gone.
Yeah.
If bans went and picks went, I think it would be too much. I do think pick and gone is an interesting adjustment as well, because then you are less like pick and gone. You are less likely to have entire teams lose or entire players lose their entire roster of normal champions to be played there, but you are forced to show at least 5 or at most 5 depending on how bands shake out.
I I kind of like that also as an option for like your weekend long in a best of 1 scenario too, because like the team is in control of what they're doing to their own pool. Where like after they after they pick their Juggernaut comp, they're not playing Juggernaut again that weekend, or they have to like change out all 5 champions, which is very hard compositionally. Like that to me makes that to me would be pretty interesting in terms of what it brings. Um, it still ends up in an awkward scenario in my opinion when you get to like game 5 or game 4, because then after the enemy team has seen you lock out 20 champions or whatever, then their first 3 bans can be very targeted towards what you have left that you can play. But it is interesting how that would shake out.
Steven, what do you think about picks out?
I think that'd just be a little too punishing as far as like we can't even come up, or we as in NA can't come up with multiple strategies to execute. So you're really gonna make us come up with like 2 or 3 when we can barely cobble together one successful like team comp and strategy. That's rude. So I like the idea of permabans through a series, but I'm not a huge fan of like the pick through. I think it's just way y- y- w- you have no benefit to like practicing something. It's like just like what's the big cheddar cheese flavor of the day? Let's try that a couple times and see what happens. I think that would be the bigger degrade on skill because you're actively being punished for perfecting something.
The other note which it relates to a point of history, is in a elimination, well, in a deciding game, right? Game 3 in a best of 3, game 5 in a best of 5. So not every series, not every time, but when it comes to a deciding game, no ban blind pick. Now, this idea comes historically from the Korean leagues because this was done in it wasn't the LCK in season 3, season 4, but this is how it was. It's a reason why the Faker and Ryu double Z play is a thing. It's a reason why what the fuck two Shens is a thing. Um it's like this was just how it was done up to a point in Korean League of Legends. It never went anywhere past that. But what do you guys think about no ban, blind pick, whatever cheese you want, whatever broken champions you want in game 5, but both teams can have them?
Yes. I think we're just outlining the different rounds of what All Stars should become, because I think that would be great to just like.
Hey, speaking of which, All Stars got canceled.
Oh well, this is why, because they're not doing this. They should be doing something
It's because
actually
they brought in a whole bunch of streamers last year and made it pointless.
valid. Yeah, was just like the view. I didn't even watch it last year because
Yeah,
it just gotten.
they announced I think yesterday that it was getting canceled for this year. So yeah, it's not even happening.
So are they? Did they cancel it? Did they say why, or they're just
See,
canceling it? Okay.
because primarily I would assume because of travel during COVID.
Yeah, but I still think that's a weak international tournament. And I think something like this would be a lot more interesting as far as let's get the best players together and put them under some extenuating circumstances just to make Twitch highlight reels forever for the entire year. And I think that would be something that a lot more viewership would come from. And then if we talk about an environment like that, I think framing an argument or debate is kind of fun. So framing it in like we're at All Stars. This is international play. We got like the best team, like the best players, like cobbled together on a team, and they got to a best of 5, and now it's blind pick suddenly. Oh, like that would actually be something worth watching.
Like
Uh,
if game 5 of World's Finals this year had been full blind,
Bonkers.
they would have both fucking picked TF.
Yeah,
Both mid laners in that series would have picked TF immediately, and we
flying
would
all
all
over
have
the
been very
place.
sad because you
So
know
like
what sucks?
Or you take Silas because
Double
you know they're
TF in
gonna
the mid
pick.
lane.
Like you got now
so
you can mind game.
so like the downside of the double blind pick is that like with the champion pool getting smaller game to game, you get more champion diversity. With the double blind pick, odds are the OP champions
Gonna be the
or
same
the
5
spicy
champions.
counter are going to get picked, and so you have a lot of mirror matches, and it's usually from the OP things. But there's like a few factors there that could keep it fresh or entertaining. Like in addition to just the sheer skill matchup, there's the fact that a lot of these OP champions don't get through pick ban during like the games when they're OP. Like
Season
you
6
don't,
Gangplank comes to mind.
yeah, or
We
like a
never saw it,
Kali,
not
you
once.
know, like or a Kali during heyday when you could dodge turrets, like you'd see them ban this champion every game, and then you'd be like, is it actually that good? Like, why are they all banning? And then you see it in this game, and then you're like, oh,
Yep, there it is.
that's
Do you know?
why.
But do you know the problem is? Do you know what the last two things that have had that high level of ban at this point have been?
Yumi,
TF and Yumi.
yeah.
I don't want to see double TF, and I really don't want to see double Yumi.
So
Yeah.
like, so it does focus it more into like how busted are those OP picks, like how balanced is the format, as well as like how much of teams actually prepped for that scenario, as opposed for like the series long bans, which is more about depth and about like how much have you prepped for yourself. Um,
And there's also like blind isn't a thing that people play.
No.
So it would force some different practice environments because you don't play a mirror matchup in ranked ever.
I,
And like the intricacies, for example, of like, let's say a Camille mirror matchup came up. You don't like you know how to do a Camille matchup into your given top laners, but like hookshot baiting into each other. What happens if you both hit your W on each other at the same time? It's like there are mechanics just with like the one champion I can think of, right?
Do you
Of
want to ult first or ult second?
yeah,
Like in
like it's
Mordekaiser
things you
mirror
never
matches.
have to think about.
Yeah. Like the Mordekaiser mirror match, do you ult first or ult second is like one of those things where it's like absolutely nutty because
What
you
happens
want to
when
ult
two
second.
blitzcranks grab each other at
Um,
the same time?
yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's another fun one. And like
The game disconnects
that
everything.
one's fun to watch. Unlike the Mordekaiser
did they
ulting another
switch? Did they
Mordekaiser,
switch
like
places?
yeah,
I think they
it's
switched places.
they
Yeah.
switch places. It's really fun. Like there's lots of fun intricacies with some of those champions, and then there's some that are very unfun. Um, so, but like, what is fun with that though is like that is what leads to like the super high skill montages, like that you're not going to get in game 5 of a degrading champion pool
Oh yeah, like
scenario.
Double Akali would have been sick to watch, even
Yeah,
when it was broken to shit. Like they would have been the only two players in the game that mattered, but like it would have been insane to watch because that's such a high skill cap.
so that would be some true like like old school like Romance of the Three Kingdoms epics. You know, it's like each team has like their general, you know, who's like completely unkillable and has this superpower button, and then there's like these normal scrubs running around with their like toothpick trying to do anything and just getting eviscerated. Yeah.
What would be your favorite mirror matchup to see in a game? What one champion do you want to see play against itself by the most highly skilled players on the planet? What lane? What setting?
So it's not a direct mirror match, but I would really like to see double Lee Sin games where both teams have like a Lee Sin player, especially if it goes late. And so it really all comes down to like which jungler is better able to make the one insect the one insect play
What's funny
that'll
about
turn
it
it
too is
over.
if the fingers are fast enough, you can deny the insect, right? Because
Yeah.
if they ward hop in and you kick them back out after they ward hop in and their ward hop is down, they're just fucked, right? Like there's counterplay to be had there that isn't normally a thing you think about.
Yeah, and I think that would be a sick skill matchup to have in a game between like peak players and both like a mechanical ability for, you know, can they press the buttons, but also as far as like game sense, like are they able to make it happen when they need it?
Steven, what do you think?
I think Double Zoe would be interesting to see, just like the utter chaos through everything going on, and just nowhere is safe. Like no one, I think it'd just be ridiculous, especially in the lane. Just like everything flying every direction and bouncing around, and
My only complaint with the double Zoe is that how much of that lane in the game is decided by who gets the redemption drop off of the first minion or second minion
I thought
wave.
they took that out.
They nerfed it,
Uh,
but like you still pick up random items and summoners from killing minions. And what they did is they normalized the early game drop, so they weren't as cancer, right? You can't get teleport, you know. Um,
Uh,
but
the trading in that lane would be super awkward after 6 too,
yeah.
because you can't R in when the other Zoe has bubble up, because if you get bubbled while you're ulted forward, it sleeps you when you get back and you're just set up to eat a giant paddle star to the face, like on a platter. So you can't trade with R except in certain windows because of that. Which,
It would
like,
be so
I
much
assume that's a thing in
posturing.
certain. I assume that's a thing in certain Zoe lanes as it is, but it's just like it sets up so well against you for the opposing Zoe that it's just it would create a really interesting lane dynamic.
what do you think, David?
My vote is for Double Rise. because I want to see realm warp dances around the map. Just like you see an alt coming in, we're gonna leave and go this way.
Rise is another one of like it's like mechanics, but it's mainly game sense, where it's like who can better take advantage of the ultimate, as well as their individual power on the map for creating advantageous positions to like win the game. And like because like you were seeing like excellent Rise play from like Perks at Worlds with that was all about game sense. He also had some sleeper ones, but like he set up specific game winning plays with Rise, just by understanding their position on the map. Sometimes solo, that was like incredible. And like those are the things that you'd look for on those kinds of champions, which would be really fun.
I think I might as well just do one for all in the best of 5 at this point, because just to see what
Um,
teams prefer.
so I chose not to say this for mine because it would be very token for me. But Poppy would be another really fun one because you can't engage on each other with W available because your engage is a dash into Poppy, which is really funny. Now imagine one for all Poppy, which is really funny.
I won it.
And I will never ever get to play it because no one wants to play Poppy but me.
This is
When
just
you
how
get
all stars
Poppy
should be.
ulted, when you get Poppy ulted, can another Poppy's aura like lock them in place? Can you like hammer scoop them into like somebody else's
I think
W?
it's a different class of movements.
Displacement. Yeah, because
I
dashes are
think
different
because
than
it's the one that's
displacement.
like
Yeah.
over the map, like
It stops Tristana jump. So
yeah,
like
it's true. I don't
But
know.
that's a
Like
dash, technically. Displacement is not a dash,
yeah.
as far as I'm aware.
yeah,
Because like if
Rioter,
Vayne,
comment below.
all the rioters that watch this show buy merch and then comment below on
Yeah, how
on
Poppy one for all works.
yeah,
We
because I'm
need
pretty sure
information.
because like if you get Vayne impaled into Poppy, she can't like pop up that and then cause the impale because it's not traveling terrain. Yeah, displacements don't work like that, I don't think.
so we are at an hour, so we're gonna wrap up. We didn't have time to talk about OGN Champions and Masters, but OGN Champions and Masters are classic, delightful, different formats that we will probably never see the like of again unless NA decides to completely integrate its academy scene into its
Which they
top
should
league,
do.
which they probably should but won't because it doesn't make any sense in a lot of different ways. Because it would be a lot of what it would be a lot of what these two things were with the orgs having two teams. It's what Samsung White and Samsung Blue came from because there were two teams under each org, which we do still have, but they don't play against each other very much.
Which is lame.
I don't disagree. Steve, what you been playing?
I played a lot of Mario Party Superstars. That's been really great. I like that. That's a vastly improvement over Super. I got a brilliant diamond for my birthday. It's still saran wrapped. I really plan on opening it and playing it because I really want to. Um, so I've more been just thinking about playing it. The holidays
I
were a
mean,
lot.
you did. Eric, what have you been playing?
I played a bit of Pokemon, but like I've also been playing League of Legends. Ultimate Spellbook. It can be fun sometimes, and sometimes it cannot be fun. And so then we hop between that and normals, where we watched Jinx with the new Axiom item, which is busted and is going to get removed from the game. Alt 3 times in one team fight.
Yucky.
I don't know how actually good that is on a Jinx though.
Um,
Because if you're
well,
in a team fight, you're not
you
close
got a
enough to do the
penta,
big
so
damage. Right?
it was
It's
pretty
like
good.
but I'm just like it does bigger damage the farther away you are. So the ult isn't my favorite part of Jinx in a team fight. I don't get it.
Well, it's like it was like a lethality
So
build.
lethality, yeah, so it probably hits harder, but like still,
So she ulted once, and
that is
then
not my Jinx power fantasy.
yeah, she ulted once, and then like zapped, and then autoed once to kill the Varus, and then we AOE womboed their team, and then she launched another rocket, and then that rocket got a triple kill, and then her ult was back up. So then she ults again for the final kill in the
Yeah.
penta, and
Yeah,
and it
that's just
was
Bark.
that
and
was
boys and
fun.
girls, that's what the beginning of season 2 of Arcane's gonna look like. Spoilers.
Spoilers.
I have been playing a lot of Pokemon. Shining Pearl, to be particular, instead of you diamond suckers.
Oh, you didn't mass reset until you got a shiny starter? You actually played the game?
I had a buddy of mine on Twitter who was doing it for 5 days after launch. I didn't. I'm not even using my starter in my team. No, I'm not about that life. I will get my Ditto, and I will. If I really want a shiny grind, I will do it by eggs the old-fashioned way.
The way God intended.
You're damn right. I think of the three of us that have currently been playing the game that I know of in our little group here, I am now the farthest because I have gone through a lot of the game in a very short amount of time, as I tend to do. I am 2 Pokemon away from completing my Synodex.
Nice.
Great. Before beating the Elite Four. So I'm gonna try and get my national
Because
Dex
that's what you do.
going to the Elite Four. Yeah. It's some good stuff. Friend of the program just copied one of my Pokemon builds entirely today, though, so I'm gonna make fun of him for that later. Details. I've also been playing a little teensy bit of Legends of Runeterra, which I think I talked about a little on the pod last week. But their arcane themed story event is actually really fun. And like they let you like do little power ups on cards and have like decks based around the characters that are significant in Arcane, and it doesn't like 100% line up with what's going on, but it's a big Piltover and Zaun story that introduces you to some of the other characters there. And it's been a really good onboarding experience to learn how to play the game and learn some of the details. I knew that I would like playing Jinx in Legends of Runeterra because of how I play Magic the Gathering, and she lines up very nicely with that, which I knew and am glad to have had confirmed.
They have it set up so for people who follow CCGs, it's roguelike. So it's you start with the deck and then you play as deep as you can, and then when you die and you have to start over. So it's like a roguelike event, and it's very similar to like Slay the Spire, where like you advancing through a map, you choose routes, and then you end up like modifying your deck with cards you get along the way. It's very satisfying. It can some of the late game stuff can be very frustrating if you're like trying to clear it for a mission or something, but yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and like I'm just like I've done the bare minimum of missions to unlock all the decks and stuff, and I'm just messing around with it. I'm gonna
You're
build.
enjoying a video game? The audacity.
They just previewed Kennen for the first time today, who I think is one of the next champions they're adding to the thing. And I had already been tempted to build some random Yordle bullshit as the first deck I was actually going to build there, and Kennen looks like a good starting place for that. He does some fun Kennen passive stuff as his special ability, which is cool. I'm into the I like how the design elements of most of the champions I've seen in Legends of Runeterra line up to elements of their play in Summoner's Rift. I think it's really cool.
Don't ask what my deck is, Steven. Don't ask.
Is it Teemos?
It's Teemos.
It's
Teemos.
Teemos.
Are you a Teemo Kaelin player? Are you full traps?
I haven't played as much since they released Caitlyn. I had Teemo Victor was like what I was really playing. Victor likes when you like create cards or playing cards that you've like added or created in your deck or in your hand. And Teemo and Teemo's friends create mushrooms. So I'm like creating tons of mushrooms to buff my robots. It's great.
Fungal
The
robots.
question that I haven't
like
dug deep enough to know is which arcane ship deck works the best? Because I don't know if Jace Victor works that well together.
Womp 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 womp.
Kate
Kate Vi's okay.
Kate Vi's okay, but it's a little weird because they don't do that much of the same thing.
Yeah. So
And
neither of those is too great.
The
Heimerdinger
other
in Science is a great ship and a great deck.
The other arcane related gameplay note is today it was announced that Silco is getting added to TFT at the mid season patch. And
Whoa.
we have no fucking idea what he's gonna do because as you may recall watching the show, he was a mastermind kind of thing, and they in their article about this they capitalized mastermind, which probably is going to be his like special five cost whatever uh quality. But he didn't really do much as far as like impressive abilities or powers or stuff.
He's just gonna sit there
So
menacingly.
like I'm interested to see what they're gonna have him do. They also like have explicitly said like we're not gonna add him to League
Yeah.
as a champion. But like which means that like this is the first unit in TFT that they're kind of just starting from a blank slate with, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, there's a little snippets of Arcane for you to end the show. Thanks y'all for watching our last episode. If you made it this far, we got a lot of views on it.
Yes,
And
thank you.
know what
Thank
people who should
you.
be viewing should be doing? Steven, where should they be going after they watch one of our episodes of stuff?
They should go to the store and buy the funky merch. It's
Today,
a
Eric is the
big
one who
mood.
sucks and isn't wearing merch.
Yeah, Eric doesn't have it together, but you can have it together by going to the funky store and buying some funky merch after you liked, after you subscribed, after you watched every single one of our videos because they're all great. You should totally watch them. You're gonna want to wear some merch. So do that. It's Christmas time. Get them for their loved ones because
It's very
they'll
comfy,
know
I can confirm.
they'll know you love them with funky merch at the funky store, funky.store. Just check that out.
And what can we find elsewhere on the channel?
You can find the Poser series where we're playing through quintessential video games from our past. Eric is currently teaching me how to play the Pokemon trading card game on the 1998 Game Boy game, and we're doing that. That's a good one. We're also playing through the original Halo Combat Evolved because Halo's a thing again. So we went back to see where it all started in the Halo Let's Play. We also have completed Sonic, Donkey Kong, and Shovel Knight. Those are all full gameplays that are on the channel. You should watch with your eyeballs. Okay, bye. Thanks.
There you go. That's the end of this week's episode of Reaction Time. We will be back next week. I have no idea what we're going to talk about. We'll find out then. See ya.
Bye.